Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to today's qualifying watch-along for qualifying, of course, for this weekend's 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix in the streets, or on the streets, rather, of Baku. Hopefully you guys are doing well on what is a humid but not very sunny, in my part of the UK anyway, Saturday lunchtime. Again, here in my part of the UK. Hopefully you guys, no matter what part of the world you're from, no matter what time it is, hopefully you're having a good day. And hopefully, like me, after the practice 3 session we had a couple hours ago, and hopefully you joined me for that watch along earlier, I'm very excited for qualifying because I think we could have a really surprising result. I really think we can. The AlphaTauris look very quick. The Ferraris look very quick. Mercedes don't look very quick. I still think Mercedes, as we'll get onto in a moment, I still think Mercedes are going to be up there. But them getting into, say, second or third place is going to be very, very hard, given the speed of their car and the speed of other cars. And again, I think we really could be in for quite a surprise in this qualifying session coming up in just under 30 minutes' time. And before we get into the teams and how I think they'll, do in this session based on really how I thought they were going to do coming into the weekend, and also based on how they've done so far in the practice sessions. Before we get into that, let's first, if you did miss my practice 3 watch along earlier, let's first get into the results of that session. So Pierre Gasly, the reason I say AlphaTauri are going to be right up there is because Pierre Gasly was P1 in practice 3 by 3.5 tenths of a second, which is absolutely massive. A gap to have, not just slightly quicker, massively quicker than anyone else. Sergio Perez second, Lewis Hamilton third. Hamilton did benefit massively from a slipstream from Sergio Perez, which gave him probably an extra 3 tenths of a second at least. So he was most likely around, say, 6th or 7th with the lap he was actually doing, but again benefited massively with the slipstream that he did get. So Hamilton was 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Carlos Sainz 5th, and then the rest of the top 10, Norris, Alonso, Tsunoda, Ocon, and Ricciardo. Alpine still looking pretty quick, which is a big surprise, to be honest. And then you've got, outside the top 10, the 2 Aston Martins, Vettel and Stroll, then Bottas in the Mercedes, who looked very poor in the session. And then the rest of the order is Raikkonen, Verstappen 15th, because Verstappen crashed in practice 3. Red Bull are currently fixing his car. They're trying to fix the track rod and his front right suspension. They will get it fixed in time, though, for qualifying. Of course, it'll be interesting to see if he does make another mistake in qualifying, which in Baku is very possible because it is so narrow, the streets, and the braking zones are very tricky as well. And then the rest of the order after him is Latifi, Giovinazzi, Russell, Schumacher, and Mazepin at the back. But we'll get in first to Mercedes. And coming into the weekend, I didn't think they were going to be as quick as Red Bull. I really didn't. And that's been proven to be correct so far. I don't think this is a circuit Mercedes will just go well at. And again, so far this weekend, they've not really coped very well at all. But what I did not expect is Mercedes to be as slow as they have been. And even in practice 3, they were not good at all. Even though Hamilton got that 3rd place again, it was massively benefited by a slipstream. If he had not had that, which most people did not have a slipstream as good as he did, then he probably would have ended up behind the 2 Ferraris in the session. Mercedes, to me, look about 3rd or 4th best team at best. Red Bull definitely are ahead of them. Red Bull, I think, still do have the best car, and they have to be the favourites for this Grand Prix weekend and for qualifying in terms of getting pole position. But then after them, again, I expected it to be Mercedes second, and then a gap to the midfield. But at the minute, it looks as though it's Red Bull, and then you've got AlphaTauri, Ferrari, and McLaren, say, close-ish to each other, with, say, AlphaTauri at the front of that, and then Mercedes, they're in there somewhere. I don't think they're behind all 3, but I don't think they're ahead of all 3 either. they're right in that battle again with AlphaTauri, Ferrari, and McLaren. And if I was to predict today, honestly, I don't think I could predict a Mercedes finishing in the top 3 in qualifying today. It can absolutely happen, though, by the way. I'm not saying it won't happen for sure. I just don't think it will happen based off what I've seen so far. And the speed I've seen from, say, AlphaTauri, McLaren, and teams like that, it's a bit stronger than I expected, especially Ferrari as well. So, yeah, I think Mercedes have got very tough day on their hands. Really, this qualifying session is all about damage limitation because they know they're not going to get pole position. The only way they're going to get pole is if a few drivers make mistakes, really. They just don't have the car for pole position today. When it comes to race victory, that's a completely different matter because as we've seen in Baku, crazy things can happen and that can benefit Mercedes if they keep it all together. So, the race, again, different matter. But here in qualifying, I don't see Mercedes really in the fight for pole position. I think they could finish... they can finish possibly in 3rd place in qualifying, which I think, honestly, given the weekend they've had, would be pretty good. But realistically, they look as though they're going to be between 4th and 8th on the grid at best, given what we've seen so far. And in, practice 3, I mean, the only thing they could have sandbagged on was fuel load. And they were running probably a bit more, not a bit more, a slight more bit of fuel than, say, Ferrari and Red Bull. And I do think Mercedes, when we get into this session, starting in just over 20 minutes, I do think Mercedes are going to be, as a team, stronger than they were in practice 2 yesterday, and also than they were in practice 3. But it's going to be tough, very, very tough. And what they've basically got to do is make sure that if it is a Red Bull front row, which I expect it to be, they've got to make sure they're best of the rest, which is what I expected them to be this weekend. But it's looking, those chances are not looking pretty good at the minute, to be honest. So I'll have to see what happens. But yeah, Mercedes definitely on the back foot. And what happens in qualifying today could end up being a big moment in the World Championship, because if they do have a very poor qualifying session, then it could have a knock-on effect. Because in the race, if they don't make up enough positions, I mean, Mercedes don't have as much power or as much of an advantage in power than they used to. So it's not going to be like they're going to be able to overtake loads of people tomorrow. So, yeah, if they don't have a good qualifying or even, a car into the top 5 in qualifying today, again, it could really be championship defining, especially if Max Verstappen can get the win, with Verstappen, of course, at the last race taking the championship lead. Talking of Verstappen and Red Bull, let's go on to them now. So, yeah, Verstappen earlier in practice 3 had an accident. Not great, but not terrible. Red Bull are still in a very good position. They still have probably the best package out there. Max Verstappen, I still think, is the clear favourite for pole position today and even victory tomorrow, as long as he does get the pole position. Even if he qualifies, I'd say second, as long as his teammate was in first place, I would say that Verstappen is the favourite. All he's got to do today in this session is make sure he doesn't make mistakes. He's got the speed. We've seen that. He has the speed. He just needs to make sure he keeps it together. Of course, earlier in practice 3, he didn't by locking up the inside front and drifting into the barriers. Hopefully, he doesn't do that again, but you never know. Could happen. Luckily for him, the damage he did was not too bad. But if he gets pole position today and Hamilton ends up 5th or 6th, I mean, he's got to be super motivated then tomorrow to get the win, because he could really pull out a healthy lead over Lewis Hamilton tomorrow if that does occur in qualifying. We'll have to see, of course, what happens. But anything other than pole position will be a disappointing result, I think, for Max Verstappen. Doesn't mean it's end of the world. He can still win, even if he qualifies second or third. But if he gets pole, then, I mean, he's given himself a great chance for victory. He really is, for the Grand Prix. Because if you look at the pole record here in Baku, I mean, 2017 and 2018 pole did not win, but there were very unusual, I won't say unusual 2018, but definitely in 2017, very unusual circumstances that caused the pole man, Lewis Hamilton, that day not to win. Pole position is, around here, I mean, of course, it's a street circuit. Pole position is going to be very, very important around this place. So if he gets pole, I won't say the job is done, but he's 60% there. So big day for Verstappen and Red Bull. And also look out for Sergio Perez, because I expect Sergio Perez to be right up there. I'd be very surprised if Sergio was not in the top 3 on the grid. Very great he has been in Baku in the past. Red Bull car's looking great. He's came out yesterday and said he's actually now understanding the car properly, which is great news for him, his fans, and Red Bull fans, and the Red Bull team. And yeah, everything for Red Bull right now is looking quite rosy, I have to say. And I think in this session, anything other than a 1-2 finish will be seen as a bit of a disappointment. Even if they get pole, I think really they'll be looking for a front row here, considering where Mercedes are and where Red Bull are in comparison to them and everyone else. Now, let's get on to the upper midfield teams, because they are of quite high interest this weekend. Ferrari, first off, don't really look as though they're a midfield team anymore at the moment. They look very quick. They're a lot quicker this weekend than I thought they would be. I thought they would be quite a distance behind the Red Bulls and Mercedes and be fighting, say, for 5th and 6th. But so far this weekend, they've been right up there in the top 3 or 4. It's been a very, very good weekend for Ferrari so far. If they can maintain that, it would be a great result. And in the race, I think they could definitely get a podium if they were able to get a grid position like they've been hovering around so far in the practice sessions. But it's really going to come down to the drivers, because it's so close in that area. I think it will come down to the drivers ultimately and the performance of them in the session. I mean, of course, the cars do make a clear difference around Baku in certain areas, but Leclerc and Sainz, for example, Ferrari, they're going to have to be absolutely on it still to, if they're going to get a top 5 starting position, they're going to have to be absolutely on it, because Gasly's looking very quick in the AlphaTauri, and the AlphaTauri car itself is looking very good. McLaren is still right in there. Of course, you've got the Mercedes as well, and they'll still be very strong compared to them. So, yeah, it's going to be a very close session between these, certain teams. And I think for Ferrari, I mean, Charles Leclerc, I'd be surprised, honestly, if Charles Leclerc was not in the top 5. I'd be surprised, given the pace of him so far this weekend. And the improved, I won't even say improved pace, the surprisingly much better pace of the Ferrari so far. Again, I'd be surprised if he did not get into the top 5. For Carlos Sainz, I don't think Carlos Sainz will get in the top 5, because he hasn't really got single laps together as much as Leclerc has, I think, so far this weekend. So I think Sainz will probably end up 6th, 7th or 8th. As long as he's in the top 8 on the grid, that's, I think, at least okay enough going into the race. But I do expect Charles Leclerc to be the main man for Ferrari in this session. And yeah, top 5 finish in qualifying, I think definitely is possible. And that's definitely got to be the expectation for him and the team in terms of what is the front-running car's highest position. And with McLaren is interesting. They're not, and they've done this a lot this season, they're not clearly faster than any other midfield outfit, but they're in there, which is what they've been so far this season. So far this season, I wouldn't say McLaren have had a clearly quicker car really at any point of the season than any other of the midfield teams. They've just always, when qualifying comes around, ended up getting good positions, and in the race, really performing well and getting a great result. They've done that plenty of times so far this season. I think McLaren, maybe they're not looking as good as AlphaTauri and Ferrari, but they're in there. And with the drivers they have, they definitely have a chance of a good grid position. I think Lando Norris probably will finish in the top 8. I think Daniel Ricciardo, as long as he gets into the top 10, even if it's 9th or 10th, that's good enough. He needs to really put in a good show, though, compared to his teammate this weekend. Even if he gets beaten, it cannot be by as much as it was in Monaco, because that was very embarrassing, to be honest, in Monte Carlo. But I think, both McLarens in the top 10 has got to be the aim. And then, Norris probably will get into the top 8. And then Ricciardo, as long as he's in the top 10, that's good enough. Because I don't think McLaren have probably as quick of a car as they thought they would do compared to Ferrari and AlphaTauri. And I think that's maybe surprising them a bit. Something probably didn't expect. Something I didn't expect coming into this Grand Prix. But of course, when it comes to the races, McLaren do tend to be very quick. So doesn't mean it's all over, even if they qualify 8th and 10th or something like that. But McLaren definitely going to be in the top 10. We'll see what Lando Norris can do, especially a man who is so good lately over a single lap. And then we'll get into the rest of the midfield teams now. So Aston Martin don't look as quick as I thought they would, but they're right in there still to get into the top 10. Will they get into the top 10? I think they probably will, but it'll only be with one car, and it'll be like 9th or 10th. I don't think it's going to be anything higher than that. I'd be very surprised if it was anything higher than that, but they're definitely in the fight. Them and Alpine are looking very quick, or close rather, not quick, close compared to each other. So that's really got to be their aim, is to beat them. If they beat Alpine, I think they will have a decent result coming away from this session. But like I said, if they do get into the top 10, it's not going to be anything as good as Monaco. It's going to be something similar to, say, the Portuguese Grand Prix, where they got Vettel into 10th place. It's going to be something like that. I think in the race it will improve, because I think Aston Martin do have very good race pace. So we'll see what they do in the race. But qualifying them versus Alpine, really, to get a car into the top 10. We'll see who wins that battle. For AlphaTauri, they are looking like, I'd say, the wild card, or the joker in the pack, especially with this man, Pierre Gasly, topping practice 3 by 3.5 tenths of a second. If we get a surprising session, we could see this man not only in the top 3, could see him fight for pole position. Imagine if he got pole position, that'd be absolutely incredible, but ultimately I don't think that will happen. But Pierre Gasly really could end up finishing 2nd or 3rd. He really could. I don't think pole position will be there for him, because I think Max Verstappen, as long as he gets it, right and doesn't make mistakes, I think Verstappen will still be the man at the very top of the timesheets. But if Gasly is close enough to Sergio Perez, through the session up until Q3, then without doubt he could end up getting a front row or even a 3rd place, which would be a tremendous result. I mean, Gasly in qualifying so far this season has been incredible. He's had 2 top 5 qualifying performances. He started in the top 5 3 times this season in only 5 races in an AlphaTauri, which is very impressive. He's had 4 Q3 appearances. He's been great this season, just continue to build on last season, and even though AlphaTauri have not been great at scoring points, their qualifying pace this season has been very, very good. And I think in this session, I think Pierre Gasly will be in the top 5. I think he will. He's been there basically all weekend, and I can't see him not getting in the top 5. I think it'd be a massive shock if he ended up qualifying down in 7th or 8th place, to be honest, considering, again, where he has been. So, yeah, I'd say the top 5 teams, or top 5 cars, I think will be in, or drivers rather, that I think will be in the top 5 in qualifying. In no particular order, it will be the 2 Red Bulls of Verstappen and Perez. I think Hamilton, Gasly, and Leclerc. Don't know what order exactly. I mean, I do think it will be a Red Bull 1-2, but in terms of 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I don't know who is going to finish in those positions out of Gasly, Hamilton, and Leclerc. I still definitely think a Mercedes is getting in the top 5. I refuse to believe they're that bad. I think Hamilton could still easily end up in 3rd place. But I think definitely Gasly, Leclerc, Hamilton, those are the people you need to watch out for in case Red Bull do not end up on pole position, because those I think are going to be the ones that possibly ruin their day. And in terms of surprises, of course, you have to look at Pierre Gasly as the surprise. I mean, if Charles Leclerc gets pole, it would be a bit of a surprise, but not a massive one, because he is in a Ferrari, and he did get pole position 2 weeks ago in Monaco, so it's not a massive surprise. But if Gasly did, then wow, it would be one heck of a surprise, and we'll look out for that in the session. Don't forget, guys, to let me know in the live chat right now, before I come to you guys quickly before qualifying starts. Let me know, what do you think the top 5 on the grid will be? So, of course, give me your pole position man, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Let me know in the live chat right now, and I'll read out as many as I can before the session gets properly underway. For Alpine, they've been surprisingly quick, Alpine. They should not really be going well at a track like this, because it's a lot more about power than anything, and Alpine have not really been that strong in that type of circuit layout. That's the reason they've done so well in the last couple races, because it's been a bit more tight and twisty, which has suited them a lot more. Yeah, Alpine being as quick as they've been this weekend, again, very surprising. I will say, though, it's very good to see Fernando Alonso so competitive so far. Hopefully, he carries that into qualifying, because he's been, I think, pretty good in the races so far this season. He just hasn't had track position. If he has track position, I don't doubt his speed in the Grand Prix. It's just, again, his pace over a single lap, which has let him down massively. So hopefully Fernando can do the job. But yeah, Alpine looking a bit better, and look out for them, because they might cause a surprise in terms of getting in the top 10 and maybe getting a decent position. For Alfa Romeo, they're probably saying that 3-car fight of Alpine, Aston Martin, and Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa are probably on the back end of that fight. I think the best, honestly, they could probably qualify as, say, 12th or 13th. I just don't see Alfa Romeo as a top 10 team this weekend. So yeah, I mean, 12th, 13th on the grid would be pretty good, to be honest, because coming into the weekend, I didn't think they would really be anywhere near that. I thought they'd be probably 15th or 16th on the grid. So, looking actually pretty good for Alfa Romeo, and especially for the race, where we know they have great race pace, and they could probably score a couple points if they can continue that into the Grand Prix. But Alfa Romeo probably not going to be featuring in the top 10 later on. And of course, Williams will not. I think this man on screen, George Russell, he will get into Q2. Don't think, though, he'll get anywhere near getting into Q3, even though the Williams car should be stronger theoretically this weekend because there's more straights. I just don't see it. I don't see Russell, doing what he did at Imola and qualify in 12th place, or what he did in, I think, Portugal and qualify P11. I just don't see that happening at all. Again, 14th, 15th is where Russell will be, and hopefully Latifi not too far behind him. And of course, Haas F1 will be at the back, and probably if there's a red flag, they'll be causing those red flags. But let's move on to these pictures as we're just about 5 minutes or so away from qualifying starting here in Baku. Cannot wait to see it. Let's again make sure, guys, to to put in the chat your predictions for the session. Let me know down below. Well, let me find some predictions here. Astro Stewart says, reckon Lewis will do a Senna and somehow still snatch pole right at the end. Marco says Perez has a good chance of pole. He does. He does, Perez. He's looked very quick. Very, very quick. This is probably the quickest he's looked since Imola, where, of course, he outqualified Max there and very nearly and probably should have qualified on pole position for that Grand Prix. I will say as well, if he gets pole, that would be a great moment for him, and I think that would really prove the doubters wrong when it comes to Sergio Perez, because there's still plenty of people who doubt him, who don't think he's good enough, and still think that, oh, Nico Hülkenberg's better, which is complete rubbish. And I hope he does, eventually sometime this season get, a result like that, because it would be a big moment for him, and it would, again, show just how good he is. Late Night Live says he thinks it'll be Max Verstappen on pole position. Gina, great to see you, says Leclerc, Perez, Verstappen, Sainz, Gasly. Rooksfoot says Perez, Verstappen, Gasly, Hamilton, Leclerc. And Late Night Live continues his prediction with, he says, of course, Verstappen P1, Perez second, and then Gasly third, Hamilton fourth, and Charles Leclerc fifth. And by the way, Red Bull have fixed Max Verstappen's car, if anyone's wondering in the chat. I actually just saw someone say that. Michael Arman says Max, Perez, Hamilton, Gasly, Charles. Astra Stevens says Hamilton, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz, Norris. That is a very ambitious prediction, I have to say, considering the pecking order so far this weekend. And I think those are all of them so far. But again, keep them coming if you haven't put yours in the chat, and I'll try, if I can, to read out a couple more, as we've got a couple minutes to go until the start of qualifying, as they're showing some of the action zones here in Baku. The action zones really are the main straight, turn 1, turn 2. Well, the castle section is one in terms of qualifying, but not for the race. But yeah, the first and third sector for the race is where it's all going to happen. But really, I'd say the middle sector and the final sector in Baku is what you need to get right. By the way, just to let you guys know as well, we have the softest 3 compounds at this Grand Prix this weekend. The C5, C4, C3, and it has actually played a bit of a difference into the running order so far. 26 degrees Celsius it is at the track. The track temperature is just under 50 degrees Celsius, so 120 Fahrenheit. And the weather couldn't be better, really. I mean, it's early June, and in this part of the world, you'd hope that the sun would be out and there wouldn't be a cloud in the sky. There is a slight wind of, 5 kilometers, but nothing massive. As the session, it says on the screen, will be getting underway in about 2 minutes time. Of course, my timer is not absolutely in sync because I tend to start my stream about a minute before 12:30, just to make sure everything's working and that. So in a moment, I will get things ready for you guys. Serigara says Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, Norris for his top 5. Wookie says Max, Lewis, Leclerc, Sainz, Bottas. Amanda Hume says Perez, Gasly, Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz. Astro Stevo's already amended his prediction with Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Hamilton. I mean, you can go, with whatever you want. You could end up being right, even if it's not, what's been normally up there in that top 5 positions. Again, I think those 5 drivers that I mentioned, Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, Leclerc, Gasly, those are most likely going to be the top 5 drivers in this session. Doesn't mean that they actually will be the top 5 drivers in this session. But let's now get things ready. Of course, the order on the left-hand side is the order from practice 3. And in a moment, I will get the... Let me just, of course, and that little text into Q1, because Q1 will be getting underway in about 25 seconds' time. And I'll make sure to put the dotted line there, as loads of cars now are trying to come out on track as soon as possible, as we start in about 12 seconds' time here in qualifying in Baku. And again, I'll put a dotted line on the left-hand side to show you guys who is in the drop zone. And there you go, 18 minutes to go in the first part of qualifying. Now, we just add this. So for anyone new, anyone in Q1 below that dotted line that you see on the screen, let me see if I can just adjust it slightly. It's more so in the middle. There you go. Anyone below that dotted line on the left-hand side at the end of Q1 will be out of the session and will start in those positions. Again, for anyone new, I know most of you already know, but some people are new and we do need to make accommodations. But there you go. As we've got every car on circuit except for Pierre Gasly, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, and the 2 Williamses of Russell and Latifi, Verstappen and Perez out on track. Verstappen's car, of course, fixed and looking in fine shape, as the 2 Mercedes now join the track, and so does Nicholas Latifi. Of course, George Russell did not, or broke down at the end of practice 3. I don't know if he'll get out for the start of the session. Hopefully, he will get out for the session. Haven't seen any news that he won't be able to make it. So we'll see about that. But at the moment, as far as I know, he should be taking part in this session, as some of the cars in a moment, as Pierre Gasly comes out on track for an outlap. Again, every car on track except for Russell, as Lewis Hamilton is now coming through to the castle section on this on this outlap. He's on the medium compound tyre, interestingly. I made the point earlier in practice 3 when I did a stream for that you don't want to be really going on the medium tyre, because the difference between the soft and the medium this weekend is so big that in terms of lap time, you are going to lose a lot. And it's not worth the risk, given how close the field is. As Charles Leclerc starts his first timed run of qualifying. Now comes through turn 2. Now he's on the DRS straight in between 2 and 3. And Leclerc now through turn 3. And car looks pretty fine. We were doing, I think, was it low 1 minute 42s, I think it was, in practice 3. So I'll be interested to see what the lap times are initially here in Q1. As Leclerc, of course, purple first sector so far. Now he comes through turn 7, now into turn 8, 9, 10, 11, which of course is the castle section. Now through turn 12, the left-hander. The exit curb that used to be there is now gone, thankfully, as it had no real use, as he now comes through the double left-hand kink of 13 and 14. Now into the tricky braking zone of turn 15. Gets it right, though, as someone else has done a purple first sector. I'm going to assume it's been a Red Bull, as he now does a purple middle sector. As now, Charles Leclerc now into the final sector, which is completely full throttle. And now round's final kinkers. Lance Stroll is out of qualifying. Surely he's not going to try and get... No, he's not. Lance Stroll is out. He's hit the wall and his right-hand tyre is folded up. He tried to drive back, but he's not going to be able to Let me get rid of the timer there because we do now have a red flag. Lance Stroll out of qualifying. Must have hit the barrier at turn 15, I believe. Can't believe he's driven that far with that tyre. And yeah, here we go. Turn 15. Locks the outside front. Turns right. And the barrier wipes out his right front. He bangs the steering wheel. Holds his head. He knows he's made a massive mistake when Aston Martin are looking good here for a top 10 finish possibly. Massive mistake by Lance Stroll, and he is already out of qualifying that quickly. That's how quickly things can go away from you in Formula 1 and around the streets of Baku. Let me just put... We have a red flag. And I'll bring up the timer back again in just a moment. There you go, red flag. 14 minutes and 1 second remaining, so still plenty of time. Only 1 lap time on the board so far. Yeah, Lance Stroll is the man who is out of the session. Such a shame, but he did make a mistake and is out. He did this, I think 2019 he may have made a mistake there and ended up really low down on the grid. So it's not like this has not happened before, but given his record around Baku, that's exactly not what he needs. It's obviously the opposite of what he needs. Yeah, Charles Leclerc at the moment is P1 with the only lap time on the board for anyone else out there. But yeah, such a shame for Stroll. More so for Aston Martin, who have a decent car this weekend. But Stroll has put it straight in the barriers. Phone Box Chicken says it's the wrong rich kid who crashed. Marco, you did actually call it. He said there'd be a few red flags, and we've already had one after 4 minutes. So this isn't a good omen going forward. I remember the 2019 Baku session very well, actually, because we had plenty of red flags in that session. I think the session was 3.5 hours long, when normally it's maybe actually not 3 hours long. I think it was 2.5 hours long instead of just the hour. Because we had Kubica in the wall, Leclerc in the wall. We had someone else in the wall as well. I can't remember who it was, though. Might have been Stroll, actually. But yeah, it was a very long session that day. And also, I remember it fondly because it was the first time I ever had 1,000 viewers on a live stream. 1,000 people watching live rather than just, after the fact. So a good day back then. And yeah, I could easily see this being, again, a session where we have plenty of red flags. And I'll update you guys as to when the session will be getting back underway, but no notification at the moment as to when that will be. Phonebox says, there seems to be more crashes and spins this year than I remember, but then I don't take much notice of practice sessions. I think last year, to be honest, there was probably more accidents that I can remember, especially in the first Grand Prix in Austria. There was so many there. I think what it is, though, is this is what you get when you get a competitive field, is you get people pushing. I mean, of course, they're pushing as hard as possible, but they've got even more pressure on their shoulders knowing how close it is. You know what I mean? So... for example, Lewis Hamilton at Imola, that accident he had when he went skating off into the barriers, that wouldn't have happened if he was dominantly out front like he was in 2019 and 2020. I think it's just, again, that increased competition is applying more pressure, and of course, with more pressure comes more mistakes and more tension. That, of course, the higher the tension increases, the more likely it is to burst into flames. as they're now putting Stroll's car on the back of a truck. Hopefully this time they don't crash into a bridge like they did 2 years ago with Russell's Williams, which was hilarious, to be honest. We don't need that, as, yeah, that very pretty-looking Aston Martin, which, funnily enough, is now on the screen, of Lance Stroll as well. Very pretty car, but now looks, well, its nose and corner has been put out of joint. As, of course, everyone back in the pits, and I'm sure by the time we get back, or by the time they get back to the pits with Stroll's car, I'm sure that'll be then the notification of when this session will get underway. So give it another 5 minutes, I'd say, at most, and we should be underway again in the session. All right, let me look at some comments here quick. Daniel says, poor Anthony Davidson is literally describing things and the director is not even focused on him, and what's the point of having him and all that equipment if they're not going to? Yeah, Sky F1 are just not what they used to be. I used to like them a bit. I mean, I never will like them as much as, say, BBC F1. With their coverage back in the day, 10 years ago, was, I think, the best coverage of Formula 1 we've had in this country, period. Sky were good, I think, a few years ago, but I think what it is because they have less competition in this country for the, the broadcasting rights, and, Channel 4 only get one live race, I think, a season. They are the exclusive holder of basically all F1 races. So I don't feel like they put in as much quality and effort into the broadcasts as much as they could. And the F1 channel they have, a lot of it is filler. It really is. I mean, it can be quite dire at times, but their contract ends in 2024, I think it is. The Sky F1 contract ends. Honestly, I hope it goes back to a terrestrial broadcaster, say BBC or ITV. Well, if it's going to go to ITV, we're fine with that, as long as they this time do not include ad breaks, because it's a recipe for disaster if they have ad breaks, given what happened, when we had Formula 1 on ITV. But even if Sky hold on to it, I think one thing I do want to see is competition. If they're going to have Formula 1 on, on British TV, I think it's got to be in the hands of more than just one person for live races. And again, I know Channel 4 have highlights and again one live Grand Prix, but they're not really in competition with Sky, because Sky have such a monopoly basically on the F1 coverage. And I think what we need to get back to is more so what the previous deal was with or even with Channel 4 when they first acquired the rights, where Channel 4 would show half the races live, half of them as highlights, because I think it would force Sky F1 to up their game, because I think because now they've had, again, such a monopoly on the coverage, they don't really try as hard anymore as they could and as they had to, especially in those first few years when BBC F1 was still going, again, with plenty of live Grand Prix. By the way, great to see Stingray in the chat. And yeah, it hasn't been around for a while, but great to see you back anyways. As we're still at a red flag, and we're still waiting. As the red flag has now gone away. I don't know if the session is literally about to get underway. I haven't seen any notifications on the TV screen to say session will be underway at this time. We'll see. But red flag has now gone away. I'll get rid of that, and I'll get the timer ready in just a moment. And I'll sync it up. I mean, it is 14 minutes and 1 second. The time left, but I'll sync it up at the 13-minute mark because it'll be easier for me to do. But yeah, cars about to come back out on circuit, and the first car will be a Haas car. Don't know who it is. I think it's Mick Schumacher, followed by Williams, and I think there's a couple Ferraris in there as well. Of course, at the minute, so far, Charles Leclerc is the only man with a time on the board. Lance Stroll in 20th place is out of qualifying, if you did not know. The reason he's out of qualifying is because he crashed at turn 15, and that's why we've had a bit of a delay. I will, in fact, now sync it up on the actual 14 minutes and 1 second, because now, thankfully, on the TV broadcast, they're doing a countdown, which at least helps me redo this. So, yeah, I'll get that up in 4, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. I think my timer is about a second ahead of the one on screen. So I'll hide it again because I want it to be absolutely right. Again, I'll bring it back up at the 13-minute mark, but we ain't going to have any lap times right away because, of course, only one time on the board. And it takes 2 minutes to do an outlap in Baku, so we'll have to give it, again, a couple minutes as we've got Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, Alonso, Ocon, Verstappen, Schumacher, Mazepin, and Russell on circuit. So good to see that Russell, his problem has been fixed, and he can get back out there and give it some. As the McLaren of Lando Norris now back out on circuit in the Macca. And I'll sync up the timer right now. So there you go. 13 minutes to go in this session. Session that I think once we get later on, I think will be quite eventful. There you go. As the Williams of George Russell is now coming towards the end of his outlap, now coming through to turn 15 when Lance Stroll scraped the barriers as Max Verstappen is trying to overtake an Alpine at turn 11 and turn 12, getting very close to the back of him, but not ending up overtaking. Of course, doesn't want to have any contact with him because that would absolutely ruin his session if he was to have serious contact that broke his car. And now backs up, of course, because turn 16, which is not the final corner on the circuit, but it's the final corner before full acceleration, people start to back up. Leclerc will now go on another lap. Now the Alpine, think of Alonso, and then it is the two Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. So we'll see now what Red Bull's pace, firstly, early on in Q1 actually looks like. As Verstappen comes flying through the kinks on the straight and now opens DRS now. And with the Honda power unit in such great shape, he's in a great position for pole position later on. But let's see what his initial pace is like. It comes through turn 1 just fine. Into turn 2. Turns in. Car looks absolutely fine. No problems at all. And now opens DRS again. Again, another section of the track where the Red Bull will be pretty strong. And now into turn 3. Bumpy braking zone. And no real issues there. Into turn 4. Slight oversteer on exit, but that's quite common on the exit of turn 4. And he's already half or almost 0.6 of a second up on Leclerc in the first sector alone. Perez even quicker in the first sector. Only by about 8 thousandths of a second, though, compared to his teammate Max Verstappen. As Verstappen now comes through the castle section. Interestingly, got rid of the inside curb, really, at the castle section. Now they've flattened it, so it's not really a curb anymore. As Verstappen now through turn 13 and 14, the kinks. Into turn 15 where Stroll had his accident. And Verstappen Slight oversteer on exit. Doesn't really get anywhere near close to the barriers. And now Verstappen 0.6 of a second up on Leclerc. Perez is quicker than Leclerc, but not going quicker than his teammate Max Verstappen, as Russell has actually just gone up to, was in 3rd place. He's now down in 4th as Max Verstappen comes to the line and goes P1 on a 1 minute 41.7. So already quicker than what we were doing in practice earlier. Perez 2nd on a 1 minute 41.9 as there's a yellow flag in Sector 2 and Sector 3. That's Verstappen. Oh, and another massive crash at turn 15. And another red flag. And it is Antonio Giovinazzi. And that corner today is proving to be, maybe it's the wind, slight wind we've got that's maybe causing that, but that corner is proving to be incredibly difficult for the drivers today. That's now 2 cars out because of a crash at turn 15. So, let me just get back on screen the text of red flag. So, of course, you guys know that we are under red flag conditions once again. There you go. Another red flag, and it is Antonio Giovinazzi out. Let's see what Giovinazzi did. So, he didn't even lock up. He just had really bad understeer by the looks of it. Yeah, I think he locked the inside front slightly, but to me, it seemed more like understeer than a mistake. And yeah, as soon as he had that, he had nowhere really to go, and he was only going to go one place into the barriers, completely destroying the front right corner of his car and his front wing. And Giovinazzi, like I said, now out of qualifying. So him and Stroll will start at the back, on the back row of the grid, which is a shame also for Giovinazzi because he's been looking pretty good this weekend. He's thrown it all away. But I'll now update the order. And we've only got 10 times on the board, but I'll update it anyway. So, currently, already 2 red flags in. Max Verstappen is in P1, and then you've got Sergio Perez in 2nd. Carlos Sainz is, 3rd. Charles Leclerc 4th. And then you've got Esteban Ocon in 5th place from Sebastian Vettel in 6th. And then Alonso is in P7. 8th is George Russell. And then 9th, Mick Schumacher. And 10th is Nikita Mazepin. Again, only 10 times on the board. And there you go. Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, Ocon, Vettel, Alonso, Russell, Schumacher, Mazepin. And then Giovinazzi and Stroll are out of the session. And then, obviously, Gasly, Hamilton, Norris, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Bottas, Raikkonen, and Latifi have not set a lap time as of yet. Well, this might actually end up being quite a long session. And I'm sure Marco will be wishing he bet on this eventuality because already 2 red flags in 9 minutes of qualifying. We've still got another, 30 minutes at least in terms of actual on-track time to go. So it's going to be, I think, quite a long session because, I mean, by now we should have started Q2 if it was under green flag conditions. And we're just about halfway through Q1. So, yeah, going to be a bit of a time here. As they're just showing a replay of Stroll doing the same thing. And yep, turn 15 proving to be such a difficult corner. In practice 3, we had people Obviously, Max Verstappen went into the barriers and broke his track rod and front right suspension. A few people went down the escape road. I think Carlos Sainz did once. I think there was also one other time that he almost crashed with traffic ahead of him. So, yeah, it's a very difficult corner. The reason it's so difficult is because you've almost got like a mini acceleration zone on from the exit of turn 12, through the double left kink of 13 and 14. It's almost like not an overtaking zone, but a bit of a acceleration zone. A bit of a breather, I guess you would say, from the difficult parts. And then you come into turn 15 so, fast, but the braking zone is so small. And also, as you brake, the track narrows, especially on the right-hand side. That barrier that's normally further to the right, when you go through those double left-hand kinks, it narrows when you get into the braking zone of turn 15. So you've got less room to your right. And then you've obviously got that curve on the left-hand side, which if you bump that too hard, it'll send you into the air and into the barrier. And you have to basically get it almost perfectly to get through that corner. It's a very difficult corner. It's not a surprise people crash there because, again, the lack of space and how tight it is. And also, if the tyres are going away, it's also another corner where you can suffer with that. So it's a very difficult corner, turn 15, and we've seen that so far. And I'm sure we'll see it plenty more times this weekend. As the marshal is now mopping up the mess made by the drivers who have so far crashed. Hopefully, no more will, but given it's Baku, I think that's a bit of a hopeful... a bit too hopeful is what I'm trying to say. That no one else is going to have an accident in the barriers. As Anthony Davidson now, I think, doing a sky pad of Max Verstappen's lap and showing what I saw, that Max Verstappen had an oversteer moment on the exit of, or through the middle rather. Well, I guess through the middle and the exit of turn 15. Very lucky he didn't hit the barriers. And then with Giovinazzi, I just want to see a replay here. I think he did lock up the inside front, Giovinazzi, but I don't think he locked it up because he made a mistake. I think he locked it up because he was already going too deep into the corner, which I don't think was necessarily his fault. I think it was more so the Alfa Romeo just having a bit of understeer into the corner. So I wouldn't say that was... I mean, it's driver error, but it's not, it's not the type of error that, say, Max Verstappen made, say that Charles Leclerc made yesterday, that they're just showing on the screen now, where he's locked up before he's even got to the corner. He Giovinazzi locked up, realising he'd gone too wide, again, because the car had collected understeer through the corner, and tried to avert disaster, but, nothing he could do. His lockup happened a lot later than most people's lockups happened. As they're just showing a replay now, Verstappen waiting waiting to get going again. Let me read out some comments. Astro Steve asked for what is the weather. Clear skies, not a cloud in the sky. And 26 degrees Celsius, I think, at the minute, or maybe 25, given that it's getting later in the day. And temperature is probably going to start dropping. And of course, in the shade, it'll be quite a bit lower than it is in the sun. As the session will be getting back underway in just a moment. I'll get the timer up in a moment, and I'll sync it up at the 9-minute mark, as we've got some cars waiting on the exit of the pit lane. So, yeah, session underway in about 20 seconds, I think, or maybe even less, probably 10 seconds. As we've got a couple of Williams waiting at the exit of the pits. Still, well, 2 cars out, of course, Giovinazzi and Stroll. Still 8 cars remaining who are still in the session, who have not set a lap time. So that's what we're waiting for, really, in this session. So, session back underway. Red flag is gone. And I'll sync up the timer in 2, 1. There you go. So 9 minutes to go in qualifying 1. And we wait to see what Gasly, Hamilton, Norris, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Bottas, Raikkonen and Latifi can do. I will say, though, for Williams, this represents a good chance, because now that we've got 2 cars out in Q1, Giovinazzi and Stroll, that means there's only 3 positions left to be knocked out in. The Williams could end up, if they're really, if they really nail the laps in this session, Williams could get both cars into Q2, which would be a tremendous achievement. So watch out for Williams. This could be a much better session result than expected. Again, given that Giovinazzi and Stroll are going to be in 19th and 20th place. As we've got everyone on an outlap except for Perez, Ocon, Vettel, and of course Stroll and Giovinazzi, who are out. As a Mercedes of, I think, Lewis Hamilton following Kimi Raikkonen pretty quickly, very closely rather. Here's Raikkonen on the exit of the pit lane, overtaking a Haas down the inside at turn 2, which I think, smart thing to do. You don't want to get held up in the middle part of the lap by another car. He goes down the inside, and Valtteri Bottas then, I think, quickly after that, makes his way through past the Haas car. Lando Norris will be investigated after the session. Red flag procedures. That sounds like a possible penalty. Oh, that's not good for Norris. So we have investigated after the session. That might be a grid drop. We'll have to see what the exact thing he did was. As now we have got some cars coming through that final proper corner before the acceleration zone. Well, say that. We've still got people warming up their tyres, such as the Mercedes here, coming down the pit straight on Valtteri Bottas. Doing about 322 kilometers an hour, now heading down into turn 1. And yeah, this is not going to be that quick of a time, I'm going to guess, from Valtteri Bottas, because he looks as though he needs to warm his tyres up first. And that's one thing Mercedes are struggling with, and that's one reason why they've struggled so much this weekend, is they are struggling to get the tyres fired up as quickly as other people, which is not a new phenomena with the softer compounds of tyre. I remember back in 2016 and 2017, Mercedes would struggle to warm those tyres up, the softest compounds then, so it's not a new thing. Happened before for them. And of course, those seasons, they were still successful. And they are still in a clear position where they can still be very successful. I mean, they're not leading any of the championships right now, but it's very close between them and Red Bull and Max Verstappen, respectively. As Valtteri Bottas now comes through the double left kink into turn 15, which is now a very keenly watched corner. And they've now got a camera right on that exit to see if anyone falls foul of anything there. As Pierre Gasly goes up to 6th place, which is, to be honest, not that great of a lap. Yuki Tsunoda goes up into 8th position for AlphaTauri. Lewis Hamilton goes up to P4, purple final sector for Lewis Hamilton, as Bottas goes 8th, about 9.5 tenths of a second down on Max Verstappen. So Lewis Hamilton up into 4th place, Leclerc 5th, and then Ocon. Well, Ocon was 6th. It is now Daniel Ricciardo in 6th position. Ocon 7th, Gasly 8th, and then you've got now Valtteri Bottas in 9th place, just ahead of Sebastian Vettel 10th, as Lando Norris did do a lap. He's only in 14th place, though. But yeah, the top 10, Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Hamilton, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, and Vettel. And then you've got Tsunoda, Alonso in 12th. And then in 13th place is Raikkonen. Lando Norris is currently in 14th with Nicholas Latifi in 15th. And then Russell is 16th with Mazepin 17th and Schumacher 18th. So with just over 3.5 minutes to go, the people needing to get out of the drop zone, I mean, of course, Stroll and Giovinazzi are out, but the other three that can do something about it are the two Haases and George Russell. Really, I think it's between, say, Raikkonen, Norris, Latifi, and Russell at the moment in terms of who gets through to the second part of qualifying. As Lewis Hamilton now starts another run. Even though Hamilton's maybe doing a bit better than he was doing earlier in the weekend, he's still nowhere near the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. 0.4 of a second down so far in Q1. And is at risk of, the drivers behind. Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly. As Hamilton now starts another lap. And comes through turn 2 now. And we'll see what he'll do on this lap as he's now got DRS active on the run down to turn 3. There's a car ahead of him that I think made a slight lock-up. I will say with the Mercedes, when I look at the comparison so far this weekend between the Merc and the Red Bull, the Red Bull does look a lot more comfortable through the exit of the corner of any of the corners compared to the Merc. I think that's the biggest difference I can see aerodynamically so far, is on the exit of the corners, the Mercedes is not looking great. As we've got a yellow flag in Sector 1, don't know what for, as we've got 2 minutes to go in this session. And yeah, through the exit of turn 12, very all over the place was Lewis Hamilton. Now the track is clear. Hamilton now into turn 15. And not going to make that mistake of going into the barriers. It's Hamilton about 0.07 of a second down on Verstappen after the first 2 sectors. Verstappen not on track currently, doesn't need to be. As Russell goes up to P11 right towards the end of the session, pushing Latifi into the drop zone. Schumacher has just gone up to 17th place. Pierre Gasly goes up to 6th. Lewis Hamilton goes P1 by 0.2 of a second. Well, even though Verstappen, I'm sure, can go quicker, that definitely shuts us up for the moment, even though it is only Q1. As Kimi Raikkonen goes 13th. And Yuki Tsunoda has just gone up into the top 10, up into 9th place. Good to see that Tsunoda so far is having a better weekend of it. Still about 1/4 of a second slower than his teammate, but his teammate is driving pretty well. But yeah, in the drop zone currently, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, the 2 Haases will be knocked out in 17th and 18th. It's really between Raikkonen, Alonso, Norris, and Latifi as to who will get knocked out of Q1, as we've got 20 seconds to go. And here is, I think, Lando Norris. Let's see what the Brit has. As Sebastian Vettel has just gone up to 9th place, as the checkered flag now starts waving. As Gasly, I think, just improved his time again. As Norris, a very good first sector. As long as Norris does this lap without making any mistakes, he should go easily into the top 10. And put Fernando Alonso instead at risk. As Norris now through the castle section. And Norris looking absolutely fine through there. As long as he gets into the top 10, I don't think he'll really be bothered with this lap. It looks fine so far. We need to look out, though, for Nicholas Latifi, because Latifi is not looking too bad this weekend and looking pretty quick still. As Norris only 0.2 of a second slower than Lewis Hamilton, as Latifi knocked out in 16th place. So Latifi is out of qualifying, and of course Schumacher, Mazepin, Giovinazzi and Stroll are out as well. As Norris, he will come to line. We'll see what he does with this lap. And Lando Norris goes 5th. Good lap for Lando Norris there. And he, of course, will be in the next part of qualifying, as Fernando Alonso smartly will come into the pits because Latifi has been knocked out. So, out in Q1, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, the two Haas's, of course, and then Giovinazzi and Stroll in 19th and 20th position. And Q2 should be underway. Let me just... So they're just showing a replay. Sorry for those noises. They're very weird noises. Just seeing a replay there of Lando Norris. They're showing... So the red flag came out right as he passed a red flashing light indicating a red flag. He was going to go into the pits and then he veered off and went back onto the circuit. He didn't cross the pit entry line because it was still the dotted line, and, you know, but in a red flag, you were supposed to return to the pits immediately. No excuses. So I think Lando Norris will get a penalty for that. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts... Well, he's going to start at the back of the grid, isn't he? Because if you do that, if you commit a red flag infringement, does tend to be, in qualifying especially, does tend to be a pretty harsh penalty. So there you go. Q1 over and done with. Now, let's get Q2 ready. Of course, Q2 is 15 minutes long, and that should be underway in hopefully not too long, 2 or 3 minutes time. So, yeah, it'll be underway very soon, and it's going to be a very interesting session because, Valtteri Bottas down there in 12th position, man on screen, of course. Not looking very comfortable as Bottas. I mean, Valtteri's performance is a lot more reliant on the car than it is for Hamilton. Hamilton is, of course, such a great driver that he doesn't necessarily need the car to be right in the sweet spot for him to do what he does. I think Bottas, again, does a lot more. Need that comfortableness, I guess you could say. With the car not being comfortable this weekend, not really surprised that Valtteri Bottas is so far down. And honestly, I would not be shocked at all if Valtteri Bottas was knocked out in Q2. Wouldn't be shocked at all. In fact, I'm probably going to predict it, that he'll get knocked out in Q2, because he just doesn't have any speed, and the Mercedes is still not looking that great, I have to say. As... Let me just put the second dotted line in. So, for anyone new, and we just get rid of one little line there. There you go. So, for anyone new, anyone below or in between the two dotted lines at the end of Q2, so currently it's Tsunoda, Bottas, Russell, Raikkonen, Alonso. Of course, that will be different in the end of Q2. But anyone in between those two dotted lines at the end of the session will be out and will have to start, of course, from those positions. As Sky F1 are currently on an ad break, so yeah, Q2 hopefully will be underway in a couple minutes' time. And I'll just say now, for anyone new watching the stream, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because we will be doing a qualifying and race watch-along for every race remaining in 2021. Even if there's not the scheduled amount of races that are going to happen for the rest of the season, whatever race there is, we will be doing it. qualifying and race watch along. And as well, don't forget to join me for the race watch along tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. UK time for what is going to be a very interesting and hopefully exciting 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Again, don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and hit the notifications bell as well as subscribing. Don't forget to smash the like button and share this stream and channel everywhere you can. Yeah, Q2 underway shortly, and I'll just move on to some different pictures. And with Lando Norris, I can't really see, like I was saying, can't really see him not getting a penalty for that, because it was pretty obvious that he should have come into the pits. I mean, he would have had a red flag notice come up on his steering wheel, and he could probably just about see it, the red flashing light as well on circuit. So I don't think he really has any way out of it. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't get a penalty, but then again, Michael Massey and the stewards do tend to surprise with their incompetence. So we'll see what happens. Let's find a couple comments here. Norman Robinson says, greetings from the Bermuda Islands. Hello to you. Let me see if there's any other comments here that I've missed. Keith Haas saying, Daniel Ricciardo is looking good this weekend. Looking better. I wouldn't say good. I mean, if he was to qualify in 8th place, I think he'd probably come out of that pretty happy, considering, you know, what's happening at the moment for him in his McLaren career. So that's all he can really hope for at the moment. As the session is underway, I'll sync up the timer in about 50 seconds from now. But yeah, I mean, if he qualified in the top 8, that'd be a pretty good result for Daniel Ricciardo, because I don't think it's something you would expect from him, given the pace of the McLaren, the pace of him in the McLaren so far this season around this circuit. I just don't think you can expect that from him. So if he was to get it, he should be pretty happy, because, you know, he hasn't had the greatest season so far, and hopefully it will improve as the cars come out now. Most of the cars are now on circuit. By the way, hello to Teresa, who says hello from South Africa. As I'll sync up the timer in 3, 2, 1, and there you go. 14 minutes to go in qualifying 2. And we've got the Red Bulls on the soft compound tyre, which are completely understandable. Again, the difference in lap time between the soft and the medium is too big. So qualifying on the medium, I don't think is an option, as possible unsafe release there by Aston Martin on with Sebastian Vettel. And not sure he'll get a penalty for that. Probably a fine for the team. Hopefully nothing penalising the driver, because it's not his fault. Anyway, Sergio Perez now starts his first flying lap in Q2. Let's see what the Mexican has for us. As I just clear my throat there off mic, because very sore, as always, and me commentating on F1 so much. No wonder, as Perez in just about now starts his lap, as we've also got, I think, Carlos Sainz starting his first flying lap of Q2. Sebastian Vettel, interestingly, the quickest over the finish line at 205 miles an hour, so 330 kilometers an hour. Sergio Perez now comes through turn 3. And like I said, the Red Bull car, in comparison to the Mercedes, the Red Bull just looks much more comfortable on the exit of the corners compared to the Mercedes. The Mercedes is a bit, on the rear end, a bit loose. As Sainz, I think, just did a purple first sector. Not anymore, though, because Max Verstappen has done a purple first sector. Very quick first sector for the Flying Dutchman. As Perez now into the castle section. Car looks absolutely fine through there. A couple bites of front end needing to go into turn 11 and 12, but nothing major. And now heads to turn 15, which is the danger corner. And he deals with it just fine. Slight understeer, I'd say, in Perez's car, but I think Perez likes that in his cars. That's why he always is very kind to his rear tyres. As Perez now through the kink of turn 18 and 19 on this very high acceleration zone. Perez now heading to the line. And we'll see where he goes. Sebastian Vettel has gone up to P1. Now Carlos Sainz goes up to P1. Now Sergio Perez goes P1 on a 1 minute 41.6. Verstappen only third. So Verstappen third. And then, yeah, Carlos Sainz currently in second. Again, Verstappen in third place. Fourth place is Fernando Alonso. Well, it was Fernando Alonso. It is now Lando Norris in fourth place. Here comes Charles Leclerc, who goes up to second for Ferrari. That's a very good effort. Only 0.03 of a second slower than Perez. Ferrari really do have the pace this weekend. So do McLaren with Lando Norris. As, yep, Alonso is in. Or let's see where this Mercedes goes. Well, nowhere. The Mercedes have done a warm-up lap and currently are sitting in 10th and 11th. But yeah, Fernando Alonso currently in 6th place, with Sebastian Vettel in 7th. Esteban Ocon is 8th. Here's a replay of Esteban Ocon at the exit of turn 3, getting the rear end out of shape. And did he clip the wall? Yes, he did. That was quite a big smack against the wall. They might want to call him back in for possible repair. Yeah, they're going to have to call him back in because that needs looking at, because that might have caused damage for him, we'll have to see. As here's a replay now of Sebastian Vettel locking the inside front into turn 15, but not going into the barriers. Doing some cadence braking, which thankfully for him meant it didn't become that big of an issue, as Daniel Ricciardo is in 9th, and then it is the rest as you see it. As Lewis Hamilton is now on a proper lap and coming to the end of Sector 2 on a 1:16.4 so far on this lap. Lost the rear end a bit on the exit of turn 16, I think. And now down the straight, he doesn't have a slipstream ahead, so he's not going to be able to benefit from anything like that. It's all about pure power as he powers his way down to the start-finish line, and Lewis Hamilton goes second with a purple final sector. The Mercedes, very quick in the final sector, as Bottas goes P7. The reason he's so quick in the final sector is because Mercedes took off the higher drag rear wing he was using before qualifying and put on a low drag rear wing. And clearly, with them only 0.04 of a second behind Perez, it is working. The session so far going to plan. Or not to plan, but going a lot better than they thought it would. As he rode the curb on the exit of turn 16 there. But yeah, Hamilton up to second. And Valtteri Bottas, who I think has a higher drag rear wing on. 7th place only for him. As here comes Pierre Gasly to the line. And Gasly only 7th. I mean, he's only 0.3 off Perez, but I was expecting a bit more with 7.5 minutes to go in Q2. But, yeah, Gasly up to 7th. And then you've got, yeah, Bottas 8th, Alonso 9th, Vettel 10th. Ocon in P11 as Max Verstappen comes to the line. and goes P1 by 5 thousandths of a second. Just 9 thousandths of a second cover the top three of Verstappen, Perez, and Hamilton. There you go. Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton top three with the two Ferraris just in behind. With Norris also in there as he always has been this season. But in the drop zone at the moment, with just under 7 minutes to go, is Ocon in the Alpine. Yuki Tsunoda is 12th. And then Ricciardo 13th. Raikkonen 14th. And Russell in 15th. So those are the drivers needing to get out. And if I look at the timing screen at the moment, I'd say, well, we'll see what Russell can do, but I'd say probably the top four, or 4 of the 5 in that drop zone, Ocon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, can still get into the next part of qualifying. They can gain, I think, enough time to get in. Of course, it will be hard for Raikkonen because the Alfa Romeo is not quite there. As much as, say, a McLaren or an Alpine is, but not too far away. About 4.5 tenths, or almost 5 tenths of a second, actually. But again, track evolution can help. Plus, you never know, Sebastian Vettel could make a mistake in the final run that helps any of the drivers in the drop zone get in. With 5.5 minutes to go. As now, we're looking at George Russell on his first timed run. And he is about 3.5 tenths of a second slower than Verstappen through Sector 1. As Esteban Ocon is on an outlap currently. And Russell, well, if he can qualify 13th or 14th, I think he'd be happy with that. Don't think he'll be able to get into the top 10 because Williams aren't that quick. As he now comes through turn 15. Gets as close to the barriers on the exit as he may dare. And through turn 16, well, he felt 3/4 of a second slower than Sebastian Vettel. So this is not going to be anywhere near getting into the next part of qualifying. I don't think even it will get him higher than 15th. We'll see as he now runs down to the line with 4.5 minutes to go in Q2. And Russell, yep, stays in 15th, half a second off Vettel. As Yuki Tsunoda, who's currently in 12th place, he comes to line and goes P4. Great lap for Tsunoda, and I'm happy for him because I want to see him do well. He's had some mental health issues in the first part of the season that's not, of course, helped his performance. And as someone who suffers plenty, as you guys know, from mental health issues, I'm rooting for the guy. As Raikkonen does another lap, improves, but he stays in 14th. So currently in the drop zone, Vettel, Ocon, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Russell. With about 3.5 minutes to go. Valtteri Bottas, like I said, very much could get knocked out here, and he is on the cusp. He's on an outlap currently, like I said, on the cusp of, well, disaster. He's not had a good season so far. He's only had, he's had 3 podiums, but he's not really had a great race, or even a very good race so far this season. Been a very disappointing season for the Finn. Not entirely his fault. For example, in Monaco, it was the team's fault. In Imola, it was his fault and another person's. And then in the other races, I think just simply he wasn't helped by the performance of the car, but also wasn't exactly helping himself either. As Valtteri Bottas is about to start his final, what should be final lap in Q2. As no, he's going to do a warm-up lap first. Of course, we still have 2.5 minutes to go. But yeah, Mercedes still struggling quite a bit with the warm-up of their tyres. By the way, just seeing on the timing screen, the top 11 are covered by half a second, and the top 7 are covered by just under 0.2 of a second. It could not be any closer. And like I said, the top 3 are covered by 9 thousandths of a second. If it's like that in Q3, I don't think I'll have a voice to cover the end of the session. As Bottas continues with 2 minutes to go to warm up the tyres. As Ferrari mechanics look on, Ferrari looking pretty good. 5th and 6th. I mean, if they came away from qualifying with that, I think they'd be pretty happy with that. And you'd have to say, given their performance here... Oh, Daniel Ricciardo into the barriers! At, I think, the exit of turn 3. Red flag. Session over. I don't think anyone's... No one's going to set a lap now, so the session is over. Q2 is done and dusted. And Daniel Ricciardo into the barriers on the entry, or on the exit, sorry, of turn 3. And he is out, and he's out in 13th position. And what I think he's done is he's locked up and failed to realise that soon enough and ended up just going straight into the barriers rather than going down the escape road where he should have gone. And yet race control confirming the session will not be restarted. So, out in Q2, Sebastian Vettel, Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo, Kimi Raikkonen, and George Russell. 3 of the people knocked out in Q2 have been on the podium here in Baku. That's just how high quality the grid is. And yeah, replay locks the inside front, tried to do some cadence braking, didn't work, and crash, bang, wallop into the barriers. His season goes from worse to even worse, and if he continues on this form, it'll go into diabolical territory, given his talent and the speed of the McLaren car, which is definitely better than where he has put it so far. But yet, he is out of the session. A shame for the others who were knocked out, who probably could have improved, such as Sebastian Vettel, but at least he's in P11, ahead of his teammate, clearly. And will get to start the race on whatever tyre he wants to, so he's not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. But into Q3 are the 2 Red Bulls, the 2 Mercedes, the 2 AlphaTauris, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso. Great result for him. Single laps, of course, have been his weakness, and thankfully, so far this weekend, he's been on it. And also Lando Norris. I will say again, very happy for Yuki Tsunoda. Again, with the mental troubles he's had, as someone who relates to that, like I said, I'm rooting for the guy, and I really hope he can get on top of it. And that was a very good lap that gets him into Q3, as Sebastian Vettel, replay of him, absolutely gutted that Daniel Ricciardo crashed at that point to cause a red flag. But there you go, session over. And now we wait for the shootout Q3, which is probably going to be the most exciting qualifying session because of how close it is in quite a long time. Only 0.2 of a second cover the top 7 in Q2. If it's like that again in Q3, it's going to be some finish to this qualifying session, which is, well, should have finished by now, but we still have the shootout of Q3. The 12-minute long Q3, which we're getting underway in probably 5 minutes time. Well, I say 5 minutes. It's probably going to be longer than that to clear away the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo. So we will wait for that. But let me just get some of the text race. There you go, Q3. And my prediction is still Verstappen pole and Perez second. I mean, that top 3 is what I thought it would be in qualifying coming into the weekend, so it wouldn't be that big of a surprise. But the AlphaTauris, the Ferraris, and Norris are still in there to cause a upset. Guys, let me know in the live chat after the first 2 bits of qualifying Who are you going for pole position? Second, third, fourth, and fifth. Let me know in the live chat right now, and I'll make sure to read out as many comments as I can before we get to the end of, or not the end, before we get to the first meaningful laps of Q3. Norman Robinson making the point. Alonso in the top 10. I know, it's absolutely fantastic to see him getting into that position. Fernando's had a tough time in qualifying after Bahrain, where I think he did the best he could, qualified 9th, and in the race, again, did the best he could. The car was just not in a good shape at all. And honestly, this weekend, he's done pretty well, considering Alpine shouldn't really be that strong here. I thought Aston Martin would definitely be quicker than Alpine, but Alpine have proven to be probably a tad quicker, which is a surprise and a good thing. And of course, later in the race preview, we'll analyse why that is the case, and why whoever finishes where, we'll analyse why that happened in the race preview at 5 PM UK time, just to let you guys know. Don't forget to join me for that hour long or so race preview, and also a look back at qualifying and why things happened the way they did, as the session Q3 will start in 4 minutes time. So Q3 will be getting underway very shortly. So let me just quickly read out some comments. And see what you guys are predicting. So Lawrence says Max. Moles says Max. Andrea Alexander says Hamilton. Gina says Hamilton. Scott Afford says Perez, Hamilton, Max for his top 3. Leonard says Perez, Verstappen, Hamilton for his top 3. Redin also says Lewis, Max, Perez. Peter King says Lewis will absolutely be on pole. If Lewis Hamilton gets pole, then it's just another pole position, of course, for him, but it's another pole position to add to the evidence as to why, for me, he is the best ever. Because that Mercedes is nowhere near as quick as the Red Bull this weekend. It's not. I mean, look where Bottas is. Bottas is nowhere in comparison. But look at Hamilton. Still right up there, making them fight for it. And that is why it is so hard to beat Mercedes. Because even on weekends where they don't have the best car, because they have the best driver on the grid and probably the best of all time, they can still end up getting race victories and pole positions, again, even when they're not at their best. So he's definitely in contention for pole, without doubt, is Lewis Hamilton. Hegel says Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, Gasly, Perez. Then Borgia, I think it is, says Checo, Max, Lewis, Charles, Norris. Mike asks, do you guys cheer for a team or driver? Not really. I mean, there are certain drivers I wouldn't mind seeing do well because of how they are as a person, but I don't support them outright. I mean, like I've said before, I do not care who wins the race. I don't care. As long as we get an exciting Grand Prix, an exciting competitive race, I couldn't care whether it was between Mazepin and Latifi, to be honest. As long as we get a competitive, exciting Grand Prix, that's all that matters. Again, some people I do like to see do well because of the way they are as a person, but I'm not supporting them over other people. Again, completely fair and balanced here, of course. Bottas on pole. There's someone, Colin Duncan says Sir Lewis per P1 and then Max P2. Let me find some other comments here. Leonard says Perez is doing a better job than Albon did in Red Bull. Yeah, absolutely, he is. Albon, I think with Albon, I feel kind of sorry for him, because at the end of the day, the reason he failed at Red Bull is not because Red Bull did anything to him. And yeah, of course, Albon made mistakes. But I think the reason Albon failed at Red Bull is because he just simply wasn't good enough, and I think was thrown into the deep end way too soon. And now, look at him. He's in a precarious position for his motorsport career, really. Could still end up in the Formula One, but, you know, it's not looking good, is it, for him. But yeah, Perez, I think, has done mostly well so far this season. I think there are a couple things he still needs to work on, such as consistency in qualifying. He can't just be good in qualifying when the track suits him. He needs to do it a bit more consistently. But his race performances have been, you know, absolutely bang on most of the time. I mean, Monaco, he was arguably driver of the day. For me, it was Sebastian Vettel, because of, you know, Vettel was in a car much slower and was able to get such a great finishing position. But yeah, Perez in the races has been tremendous, and that's exactly why they got him when they did. As there you go, timer synced up, and it is 11 minutes to go in qualifying. Who will get pole position? Will it be... And by the way, thank you to Exo Sky for a donation of, I think, €2. It says for you, man. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. Who will get pole position? It looks as though it's between the two Red Bulls, Lewis Hamilton, the two Ferraris. To me, again, you've got Norris and Gasly in there possibly, but will they end up actually featuring in the fight? We'll have to see. As Valtteri Bottas, we'll see if this is going to be a warm-up lap or a proper lap. As Bottas, will he open the DRS and make this a proper lap? Yes, he does. So Bottas is going to go for it on this first lap in Q3. He got pole position last time we were here in Baku with a great lap. Can he do it again? Probably not, but you can always give it a great go. And nope, I think this is probably a warm-up lap. He doesn't look like he's going that quickly. No. Bottas is not going very quick at all by the looks of it to me. As Leclerc has started his lap in the Ferrari, along with Lewis Hamilton, and Carlos Sainz has now started his lap. And yeah, Valtteri Bottas definitely not pushing. Just going for a bit of a warm-up lap to get the tyres fired up. Lando Norris now starts his first lap of Q3. Now, so does Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen. And then Fernando Alonso. The two AlphaTauris, interestingly, are in the pits. I wonder, because I remember Max Verstappen a couple years ago did his qualifying lap when all the cars came back into the pits and actually ended up with a decent position. So I'm thinking maybe that's what AlphaTauri are going for there. As here is Charles Leclerc. He got pole in Monaco, but threw away the race win because of a mistake in qualifying. And is looking for yet another pole position. Could have had pole position here in Baku 2 years ago, but again, threw it in the wall. Can he keep it together and get what would be an amazing result for the team as he gets so close to the barriers on the exit of turn 15 as Carlos Sainz has done a purple first sector. Charles Leclerc, a 1:16.0 so far for this lap. Carlos Sainz about a 10th down on Leclerc. So Leclerc looking good here, and he's got a car ahead of him, so he will get a slipstream. I think it's a Mercedes. It is. So Charles Leclerc, as Bottas goes P1 with a slow lap, Charles Leclerc will come to the line and go P1, of course, on a 1:41.2. Carlos Sainz comes to the line and goes second, 3.5 tenths slower. Perez and Verstappen so far have not done a purple sector. Can they go quicker as Norris goes third in the McLaren? Sergio Perez only fourth. Max Verstappen second. but 3 tenths down on Leclerc. That lap from Leclerc was a stunner as Alonso goes 6th. So let me just update some of the order there. So Charles Leclerc currently on provisional pole position as we are now seeing Mercedes do their proper laps now, as you got Verstappen 2nd, Sainz in 3rd, Lando Norris in 4th, Sergio Perez 5th, and then Fernando Alonso in 6th position. The rest of the drivers have not set a representative lap as of yet. Let's see what Bottas does for the middle sector. It is 8.5 tenths down. Hamilton a 10.5 down in that middle sector. Can Hamilton reclaim all of that time in the final sector where he's been so quick so far in Q3, or in qualifying in general, sorry, as Bottas giving his teammate a tow down the pit straight. Bottas will come to the line and Valtteri Bottas goes 7th, but Lewis Hamilton goes 2nd ahead of Max Verstappen, only 2 tenths of a second down on Charles Leclerc. But after the first runs, and we still got the 2 AlphaTauris to come, it is Charles Leclerc currently on pole position from Lewis Hamilton 2nd, Max Verstappen 3rd, Sainz 4th, and Norris 5th. What a top 5 that is. As tasty a top 5 as you'll find. And now, like I said, the 2 AlphaTauris now take to the track as Bottas in 8th place behind Alonso. I think Bottas, honestly, is going to be lucky to get in the top 6 or 7 on the grid here. Looks nowhere near the action up front. But what a lap by Leclerc. A 1 minute 41.2. And that middle sector, especially from Charles Leclerc, a stunner that has kept him ahead of the rest of the pack. Will the Monegasque get his 2nd pole of the season? Who thought this would happen for Ferrari, being in this type of position? As now, we get to see the AlphaTauris as Yuki Tsunoda starts his first, probably final lap in qualifying with 5 minutes to go. His best grid position so far this season in his first season of Formula 1 action has been 13th in Bahrain. He's guaranteed a best qualifying of the season, but can he make it an absolutely stunning qualifying result? Let's see, as comes through turn 1. His teammate just behind. Tsunoda now through turn 2. Car looks absolutely fine through those corners. AlphaTauri car looking comfortable around the streets of Baku as Gasly loses the rear end slightly on the exit of turn 2. As Tsunoda now through turn number 3. Leaving no space. Getting the absolute most out of what is out on circuit. As Tsunoda now comes up to the first sector, only a 10th of a second down. Pierre Gasly does a purple first sector in the AlphaTauri. 7/100ths of a second up on Charles Leclerc. Hold on to your seats, guys. This could be a thrilling end to the session. Only 3 or just over 3.5 minutes to go. As Yuki Tsunoda now through turn 11 and turn 12. Now Pierre Gasly through turn 11 and turn 12. As Tsunoda will negotiate turn 15 first, and if he has an issue, he will mess up his teammate's lap. He has not had an issue. And let's see what Tsunoda has done. Tsunoda half a second down on Leclerc in the middle sector. Pierre Gasly still quicker than Leclerc in the middle sector, but not a purple middle sector. So it's all going to come down for Pierre Gasly to the final sector in terms of whether he, amazingly, can get pole position in the AlphaTauri. As Yuki Tsunoda will come to the line first. And Yuki Tsunoda, he goes 7th, which is okay enough. Pierre Gasly comes to the line, and it's only P4. He lost too much time in that final sector. Lost 3.5 tenths in the final sector alone. Obviously didn't have a good run out of the final proper corner as a McLaren of Lando Norris there tries to pass Carlos Sainz. But at the moment, it is Pierre Gasly up in 4th position. with Yuki Tsunoda in 8th. And that pushes, of course, Carlos Sainz with Gasly going up to 4th. That pushes Carlos Sainz down to 5th. Norris 6th and Perez 7th. Perez needs to put in a big lap here. Cannot afford to qualify down in 7th position. He just cannot afford to do that. But I'll get him up on screen. The current provisional pole man. Let me just adjust that picture a bit. Yeah, this man on screen is the provisional pole man. Will he get it with just under 2 minutes to go in this session? Couldn't have a better poised top 3. Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen. Not in that order, but they are the 3 best on the grid. As a fan watching from a rooftop there, here on the streets of Baku, I think the AlphaTauris are going to go for another lap because they look as though they're backing up to set themselves up for another lap here. As we've got a lot of jostling for position here into the final corner. And Carlos Sainz is going to have to go for it or else he's not going to make it. And yeah, the AlphaTauri not going to do another lap here, as Fernando Alonso there, I think, has had a very poor run. Yeah, he has, onto that final real corner. As now, here comes Max Verstappen. Can Verstappen get pole position? He's only had this season 1 pole position. Given he's leading the championship and he's been so good this season, you'd think it would have been 4 or 5. But it is only 1 from the first race in Bahrain. Since then, he's had plenty of chances, but has not ended up doing well enough to get on pole position. As Verstappen, through turn 1 he comes on this final lap with Perez just behind. Perez will get the advantage of a slipstream as a yellow flag in sector 1. Oh, and a car in the barriers, another red flag. Oh, and the 2 cars have had a crash with each other. It's a red flag. It's the end of the session. And Charles Leclerc is on pole position for Ferrari from Lewis Hamilton 2nd. And Max Verstappen, disappointingly, is in 3rd place with Sergio Perez down in 7th. And yeah, Sainz and don't know what AlphaTauri that is, but they've had a collision. But it is Charles Leclerc on pole for the 2nd race running. Who thought he'd even get pole this season? He's done it twice. He's had more pole positions this season than Max Verstappen. And Verstappen, of course, going for the World Championship. But there you go, guys. A very anticlimactic end to the session, as we've had so many times this season. And it is Tsunoda here. So Tsunoda's locked the inside front, like Ricciardo, and gone into the barriers at turn 3. And then what has Carlos Sainz done? Carlos Sainz, then after Tsunoda, has, I guess, been surprised by the yellow flags, locked up. Well, so Tsunoda's locked up just in front of him and crashed. Then Sainz has locked up, locked the rear end, spun round, and then broke his front wing, and then got going again. So, what a dramatic end there to qualifying. But it is, again, Charles Leclerc on pole position, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, something he probably should have got 2 years ago. Can he this time get victory? Something he probably would have got in Monaco had he not crashed at the very end of qualifying there. Lewis Hamilton 2nd, vital for the World Championship, that is. Him up in 2nd place. Max Verstappen 3rd. Gasly 4th. Sainz 5th. Norris 6th. Perez down in 7th. Such a shame for him, but his first lap was simply not good enough. And that's all his fault. And then Tsunoda 8th. Alonso 9th. And then Bottas 10th. Even though Tsunoda had a crash, Tsunoda should be happy with 8th position. That's a good result for him. And then knocked out in Q2, Vettel, Ocon, Ricciardo, Raikkonen and Russell. Then knocked out in Q1, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, Giovinazzi and Stroll. And don't forget, guys, to join me at 5 PM UK time, which is in about 2.5 hours, for the race preview for tomorrow's Grand Prix. And don't forget as well to join me tomorrow for the race watch-along for tomorrow's 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where I'll be joined, of course, by Nib for co-commentary. Again, don't forget to join me and subscribe for that race watch-along coming up tomorrow, and hit the notifications bell for that. But let me see if there's any final comments. Yep, there is. I'll read out some final comments before we come to the end of the stream here. But yeah, don't forget to join me later on for a recap of today and a preview of tomorrow. Let me find some other comments here that I've missed. Amanda saying Ferrari masterclass once again. De Rugara just pointing out that Tsunoda crashed. Justin very unhappy about the crash, which, well, it's a bad thing because, you know, again, another anticlimactic finish, which is not what we want. Let me find other ones here. Even when the Mercs are struggling, Max still can't take pole, and all we hear is Max is the fastest driver. I don't think Max is the quickest driver on the grid in terms of pure single lap speed. I think he's, well, again, I don't think he's the quickest on the grid, period. I still think it is Lewis Hamilton. But he is very, very quick. It's just, I think if Max Verstappen doesn't win the championship this year, which I don't think he will still, because I still think Hamilton and Mercedes are too good, qualifying is where it will have been lost. Because, like I said before that whole red flag incident, Verstappen has had 1 pole position in 6 races. He could have had pole at all 6, and he's only had 1. Imola bottled it. Portugal bottled it. Spain, I won't say bottled it. I think actually he did the best he could, but he still did have a very good chance of pole position. Monaco was unlucky that Leclerc crashed, because I think Verstappen probably would have got pole. But then here, yeah, there's been a red flag at the end. That doesn't mean he would have got pole. You know, too early to say, because he didn't do enough sectors on the you know, on the circuit and that final lap to really judge whether Max Verstappen would have actually got pole position. But the problem is not that he's not quick enough, it's he doesn't put in Max a good enough first attempt. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, you'll notice in qualifying, Hamilton always puts in a really, really good, sometimes, a lot of the time even, Lewis Hamilton's best lap will not be the final lap of qualifying. It'll be his first lap in Q3. And then his second lap will be, say, slightly slower. Or if it is better, it's only slightly better. But normally Hamilton will bang in a great lap first in Q3. And then if he goes even quicker, then of course he knows that it'll end up being good for him. With Verstappen, I think he just puts too much pressure on himself by not, you know, having a good enough first run. Therefore, he can't, you know, get it together for that final run. So, again, if Verstappen does not win the championship, he's got to look at qualifying as a major reason why, because he should have had pole position at least 2 more times so far this season, given the pace that the Red Bull has had, but just simply has failed to do so and has cracked under pressure, quite frankly, a couple of times. But guys, that's it for this qualifying watch along. Thank you guys so much for coming along. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the race preview later on, and the race watch along tomorrow at 12:30 PM UK time will be live. Of course, the race starts half an hour later at 1 PM UK time, and we'll be co-commentating, me and Nib, for what is sure to be a very interesting and hopefully exciting Grand Prix in Baku. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there, or go to my channel page and do it there, and hit the notifications bell whilst you're there. As well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this stream and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to join the Discord server, link below in the description. Best place that is, that server, for notifications for my videos and streams. So if you want that desperately, join the Discord server and just make sure you're active enough on there, and you should get a better notification as to when I go live later today and tomorrow, and of course on Monday for the race review on Monday night as well. But until 5 p.m. with my race preview, so 2.5 hours from now, guys, it has been me, Shazza HD. Goodbye.